The tongue goes quiet first. Not the salt, not the char, not the thyme grown on that windowsill for 3 years. Just silence where taste used to answer. That's the part nobody tells you. How a body keeps performing competence long after the feeling has drained out of it. The pot gets stirred anyway. Seasoning happens by memory now, not by sense. And somewhere upstairs, a man who has lived 400 years still hasn't noticed that the woman feeding him has already started leaving. If you've ever fed everyone at your table and let your own plate go cold, stay a while. This one's already yours. The stock has been going since 4 that morning. Marrow bones. The good ones from the butcher on Charlotte Pike who saves them without being asked anymore. Onion charred black on one side, the way Desmond likes it, though he's never once said so. That's how most things get learned in this house, by watching what gets left on the plate. The spoon dips in, a breath crosses it out of habit, though heat stopped registering accurately sometime around March. The taste test happens. Waiting follows, for information that doesn't arrive. Salt, maybe, or the memory of salt, which isn't the same thing, though it started standing in for the real one. A pinch goes in anyway, then another, because the first told nothing, and the second needs to. The hand holding the spoon doesn't shake. That much needs to be understood, even in private, even in this low copper light with the kettle ticking as it cools. Steady, but watch the way you'd watch a stranger's hand, waiting to see what it does next. 3 years running this kitchen, long enough that the walls feel more familiar than most people do, the water stain shaped like Kentucky above the sink, the third floorboard that gives a little underfoot, a small confession the house makes to no one else. Long enough that the work stopped feeling like work sometime in the 2nd year, and started feeling like the only real conversation shared with Desmond. He speaks in what he eats. The answer comes back in how it's cooked. The spoon gets pressed to the mouth again. Salt, maybe. It rings against the pot rim when it's set down too hard. A small bright sound in a kitchen otherwise full of steam, and the low complaint of the stove. Footsteps on the stairs. Even and unhurried, the pace of someone who has never once in 4 centuries had to rush toward anything he wanted. "It smells like Tuesday in here," Desmond says from the doorway. It is Tuesday, meant as a compliment. A pause, deliberate, the kind meant to be filled. It doesn't get filled. He comes closer instead, close enough to catch the cold that clings to him even indoors, a chill that never quite leaves his skin, no matter the season. "You made this the Tuesday I came back from Memphis. The delegation that didn't go how I wanted. True. No memory remains of telling him that, or of him noticing enough to keep it. You remember that? I remember the soup." He says it like an apology for something unnamed. I don't always say when something is good. Doesn't mean I don't know it. For one unguarded second, warmth spreads through the chest, plain and simple, the animal pleasure of being seen doing the one thing done well. That feeling gets kept, unexamined, in case examining it makes it stop. Then he reaches past for the spoon and tastes it himself before anyone can stop him, the way he's done 100 times, testing the work the way another man might test a fence line, from habit rather than doubt. "Perfect," he says, as always. The question wants to come out. What does perfect taste like tonight? Did the salt land right? Did the char come through? Is there a version of this soup where something is finally wrong in a way he'd notice before being told? None of it gets asked. Asking would mean admitting the answer isn't already known, and not knowing has never been allowed in this kitchen. Glad it's up to standard, comes out instead, quieter than intended, turning back to the stove before he can see whatever is happening on the face he's left behind. He leaves the way he arrived, easy, unbothered, already thinking of something 4 centuries deep in his own concerns. His footsteps recede up the stairs, and stillness settles, listening to the stock murmur to itself. A pot of water gleams on the back burner, copper-bottomed, the kind Desmond's grandmother's grandmother might have used in some other kitchen, a lifetime before this one. A reflection catches there without meaning to, warped and dark the way copper always renders a face. Even bent and bronzed like that, the hollow beneath the eyes shows the colour of a bruise that never got the chance to heal. The collarbone sits sharper against the collar than it did at Christmas. The gaze breaks away first, the way you look away from a stranger who's caught you staring. It's the light. That's the story being told tonight. And most nights the story gets believed, right up until the moment alone finally forces it to stop. The soup needs another hour before it's what it should be. There's time. There's always time, or so the telling goes. Right up until the evening a clinic number nobody recognizes lights up the phone. 3 weeks from now, on a Tuesday, nothing has been cooked for yet. The clinic waiting room smells like carpet cleaner, and something underneath it that carpet cleaner never quite gets rid of. The form gets filled out twice, handwriting sliding off the line the first time. Under emergency contact, nothing gets written for a full minute before Desmond's name goes down, then gets crossed out, then gets written again. Who else would go there? A clinic on the other side of the county got chosen on purpose. 40 minutes past every place ever mentioned to anyone in that house. The driver heard an address that belongs to a stranger's life. In a way it does. This is the version nobody else gets to see, sitting under fluorescent light in a paper gown, waiting to be told something in a room with no window. Dr. Whitfield has kind eyes and the particular stillness of someone who has said hard things enough times to find a way through them without flinching. That stillness cracks today. That's how the news arrives before her mouth opens. The scans show involvement in the pancreas, she says. And here, her pen taps the film twice, like punctuation. By the time something like this makes itself known this way, it's typically already. She stops, chooses a gentler word. Advanced. Stage 4. No dressing it up. Gratitude arrives for that, even as the 2 words rearrange the furniture of an entire life without asking permission. How long? Months. Possibly longer with treatment. I want to be honest. Treatment at this stage manages. It doesn't reverse. A nod comes, like she's just said the stock needs another hour. Like this is information that can be used rather than information doing the using. Do you have someone with you today? No. Too fast, the way you answer a question, already decided against thinking about. Drove myself. A referral gets written. A specialist gets explained. A scheduling number. A packet of paper, destined to go unread on the bus, in the car, possibly ever. It gets taken anyway. Hands do the polite work of accepting things while the rest of the self sits 3 feet to the left, watching this happen to a woman who looks familiar. No tears fall in the office. That skill got learned long ago, saving it for later, for a version of alone with no witnesses. But something in the chest has started making a sound only one person can hear, low and constant, like a pot right before it boils, before you can see it, when it's already begun. In the waiting room afterward, the knees give out without consultation. The plastic chair takes the weight hard, gown still half tied beneath the coat, hands rising to cover a face before there's time to stop them. An older woman 2 seats down looks up from her magazine, soft at the jaw, sharp at the eyes, a cardigan the colour of weak tea pulled tight across her shoulders. "Rough one," she says, not a question, just naming the weather. "Yeah." The voice comes out smaller than intended. She reaches into her bag and hands over a peppermint, the hard kind wrapped in cellophane, the kind that's been sitting at the bottom of purses since before either of them were born. "Nobody ever asks how you take your coffee in these places," she says. "They ask how you're feeling and then don't wait for the real answer. Here, suck on that. Sugar helps more than people think." A short, ragged laugh escapes, surprising them both, and the peppermint gets unwrapped with hands shaking just enough to make the cellophane loud. "Thank you." The words carry more than the candy deserves. "You don't owe anybody the version where you're fine," she says, gathering her things as her name gets called. "Not even yourself. One pat on the knee, the way you'd pat a dog you'll never see again, and then she's gone, down the hallway, absorbed into the business of her own diagnosis, her own waiting. A long moment passes after she disappears. Nobody in that room knew what this life looks like most days. Nobody needed anything. For 4 minutes, in a plastic chair under bad lighting, only a woman existed who'd been given terrible news and handed a peppermint for it. Nothing about it required being useful. That thought turns over like a stone in a pocket, surprising in its weight, unfamiliar in how it settles. The drive home takes 40 minutes, and none of it stays in memory. Return to the body happens somewhere in Desmond's driveway, engine off, hands still on the wheel at 10 and 2, like letting go might start something unstoppable. Inside, hands washed, dinner started. No decision gets made to do this. It just happens, the way water finds the low ground, bones on the stove, the onion under the knife, motions the hands know without needing the rest along for it. Braised short ribs tonight. The recipe that takes 4 hours and more patience than remains right now. Chosen anyway. Maybe because it needs so much that there's no room left over to think. The knife taps unevenly against the cutting board, off rhythm, betraying what the voice never has. It gets set down, a breath, picked back up. Salt, pepper, a hard sear in the pan, until the fat renders, and the kitchen fills with a smell that has nothing to do with the last 2 hours. That smell becomes a rope thrown down a well, and it gets held onto. Onion, garlic, the good red wine Desmond keeps for cooking, that costs more than a first car ever did. It all goes in, and something in the chest loosens by half an inch, not because anything has changed, but because the hands still know how to do this one thing, even now, even carrying what they're carrying. The pot goes into the oven, 4 hours. The timer gets set with fingers that have finally stopped shaking, and the quiet holds a palm flat against the warm oven door, listening to nothing at all. No clinic, no diagnosis, no name yet for what's growing inside. Just the low tick of the kitchen settling into its evening rhythm, the only conversation still known well enough not to lie in. If this has awakened something familiar, if some part of it already feels lived, there are more women like her in this city. Women who thought being needed was the same as being wanted. But stories like this are easy to lose if you let them slip away. The ribs came out perfect. 3 days of memory keep returning to that pot at midnight, watching the meat fall off the bone with no effort at all, thinking that if the hands could still do this, some part of the rest could still be trusted. That thought has been held onto like a coin, checked again and again, to be sure it's still in the pocket. Which is maybe why Yes got said when the agency called about the girl. Priya starts on a Wednesday. 24. Quick hands. A nervous habit of apologizing before anything's gone wrong. Desmond hears its precaution, in case the autumn gatherings catering gets to be too much for one set of hands. Not even a lie, that part. Just not the whole truth. A different kind of lying that lets sleep come easier while the important thing stays hidden. The stock gets taught first. How long the bones need. How to tell when the marrow has given up everything it has. Which knife Desmond likes his bread cut with, though he's never said so. And how he takes his coffee, dark enough to offend, not so bitter it interferes with what he claims to still taste after 400 years. All of it gets written down in a little book with a soft cover, steady handwriting, that has no right to be that steady. Why does all this matter so much? Priya asks on the second day, wiping flour off her wrist. It's just food. It's never just food. Something in the chest closes around the words before they can be stopped. It's the only language some people know how to speak in. She doesn't ask what that means. Gratitude follows for that. Desmond finds them at the counter on Friday, Priya rolling dough while her thumbs press too hard into the center. He stands in the doorway a beat too long, the way he does when something in a room doesn't match what was expected there. Who is this? Priya, helping with the gathering menu. The dough gets attended to instead of his gaze. Since when do you need help? Not really a question. His voice carries the flatness it gets when a small lie has been caught, and he's deciding whether it's worth the trouble of naming it. Since 400 guests started looking like a great deal of food for one person to manage alone, his eyes finally get met. You'll barely notice she's here. He studies that a moment longer than the answer requires. Something works behind his face, some calculation that won't translate. And for a second, it seems like he might ask the real question underneath the one asked. Then Priya drops a rolling pin, and the moment scatters across the floor with it, and he's gone before the truth of what he almost said can surface. That night he comes to the small room off the kitchen where the household ledgers get kept. The same room 3 years of his accounts have been balanced in. He sits across the table without asking, which he's never done before, and for a while neither voice breaks the quiet, the silence filling the space between them, like water finding its level. Tell me something, he says finally, about before. Before what? Before all this. Before you learned what I like in my coffee. His voice has gone quieter than ever heard from him. I realized today I don't know what you wanted to be. When you were young, nobody has asked that in longer than can be counted. A teacher, the word comes easier than expected. I wanted to teach children how to read. Used to practice on my little brother. Made him sound out words from cereal boxes at the kitchen table. Something loosens in the chest, the way a knot gives when the pulling finally stops. My mother died before the certification could be finished. There wasn't money after that, and there wasn't time, and somewhere in there a kitchen started feeling like it would always need me, in a way a classroom full of 8-year-olds might not. That isn't the same thing. No, but it felt close enough, some days. He doesn't answer for a long moment. When he does, an edge has entered his voice that's never been heard there. Something almost like grief for a version of this life he never got to meet. I'd have liked to have known her, the version of you who wanted that. She's still in here. Belief in that, just a little. Skets allowed for once. She just learned to season things instead. That sits between them a while, the ledger open and forgotten, and it becomes the closest thing to peace felt in this house in 3 years. That warmth still holds the next afternoon, walking into the pantry for the good vinegar, the one Desmond keeps on the top shelf because he likes knowing it's out of easy reach. The floor tilts. Not the room, just the floor, like someone's pulled a rug out from under the world a second ago. A hand finds the shelf before thought catches up to what's happening, fingers closing hard around the edge of old wood, and the fall happens anyway, slower than falling, more like sliding, down against the shelving with jars of preserves at eye level, their reflections warped and doubled in a way that turns the stomach. No call for help goes out. That's the part hardest to explain later, why the mouth stays shut even while the body insists something has gone seriously, undeniably wrong. Counting breath comes instead. In for 4, out for 6. The pantry smells like dried thyme and old paper, and somewhere above, a jar label reads, sea salt, coarse, and those 3 words become the only solid thing left in the room, fixed on and held. 10 minutes, maybe longer. No clock gets checked, because checking would mean admitting the need to know, and knowing would mean this is real in a way still being refused. When the legs finally agree to hold weight again, standing happens, using the shelf the same way the fall did. Slow, deliberate, one board at a time. The apron gets smoothed. The vinegar gets picked up. Walking back into the kitchen happens like nothing occurred at all, and nobody comes looking, because nobody knew there was anything to find. The vinegar goes back on its shelf like nothing happened. That trick has been mastered by now, folding an event so small it fits back into the shape of an ordinary afternoon, no seam showing. But the spine has kept a low, steady ache since the pantry floor, a reminder that doesn't go away just because it's stopped being mentioned. The gathering is 9 days out. 40 guests, 6 courses, allies of Desmond's who measure loyalty by how well they're fed. This dinner has happened every autumn for 3 years. This year the pain has started arriving in the back before it arrives in the stomach, which feels like a small betrayal, the body finding new places to fail before finishing with the old ones. The night of, the kitchen gets moved through the same way always, steady, unhurried, never once dropping anything meant to be held. Nobody watching would know that every bend toward the lower oven sends something along the spine white hot for a beat too long before it fades. The second course gets plated alone. Duck, cherry reduction, the good greens Priya has learned to trim without bruising. The hands don't shake doing this. They never have. Whatever else the body has decided to take, it hasn't touched the hands yet, and a stubborn, quiet gratitude holds for that, the way you're grateful for the one lamp still working in a house gone dark. A guest catches the doorway between kitchen and hall, one of Desmond's older allies, a woman with silver hair and sharper eyes than most of her kind bother to keep. Her study lasts a beat too long. You've gone thin, not unkind, just observant, the way people are who've had centuries to learn what a face does before it falls apart. Busy season. The practice smile comes out, convincing by now. 6 courses tends to keep the weight off. She doesn't quite believe it. That shows in the small pause before she lets it go. But she lets it go, and the reprieve gets taken like something stolen. Service finishes. Every dish lands exactly when it should. Timing so precise it looks effortless, The only kind of praise this house has ever offered, the absence of complaint. By the time the last plate clears, the legs have gone from ache to something closer to static, a low hum, with no locatable source anymore. Desmond finds the kitchen door once the guests have gone, coat still half on, the cold Nashville night sitting on his shoulders, the way it never quite touches skin, the way it touches everyone else's. Bracing happens for the critique. 400 years of hosting has given him strong opinions about reduction and timing, and whether the wine was poured a degree too warm. A small callus has been built for this moment, every dinner, waiting to hear what got almost right. "Thank you," he says instead. Just that. No addendum, no correction folded in after. For the duck, for all of it. His look lasts longer than usually allowed. I don't say that enough. I know I don't. No ready answer exists for gratitude with nothing attached to it. It sits strange in the chest, warm and unfamiliar, like a room this house was never known to have. "You're welcome." Smaller than intended, wanting to hand the moment back and ask him to say it again, slower, just to be sure it was heard right. He doesn't linger. He never does. But his hand touches a shoulder once on his way past, brief, almost absent, and it stays there after he's gone, the way heat stays in a stone, long after the sun's moved off it. That warmth gets carried all the way upstairs. Undressing happens while holding it, sitting on the edge of the bed with knees together and hands folded, doing the quiet math of whether one kind sentence can be enough to live on for a while. It isn't, as it turns out. Not tonight. The water comes back up within the hour. Plain water. Nothing else left in the stomach to lose, which somehow makes it worse, the body rejecting the one thing it should have no argument with. Kneeling on the bathroom floor happens, forehead against the cool rim of the sink, waiting for it to pass, counting tile grout lines the way jar labels got counted in the pantry, because counting is the only thing that's ever made these minutes survivable. Cleanup follows the usual way after, quick, thorough, no evidence left for anyone to trip over. Then sitting on the closed lid of the toilet in the dark happens for a long while, not moving, not thinking anything that could be put into words, just letting the body finish whatever it started. Somewhere in that stillness, a thought arrives, quiet and practical, dressed up as something other than what it is. The instructions should get written down, just in case Priya needs them, and there's no one available to walk her through it. Just in case the gathering next year falls on a week with a doctor's appointment that can't be moved. Just in case. Precaution. That's the word chosen for this. The same word used for hiring her in the first place. The small desk in the bedroom gets an hour by lamplight, every recipe that matters, every preference Desmond has never once stated aloud, but that's been catalogued like a language. Only one person here still speaks fluently. How long the stock needs. Which knife for the bread. The wine he likes for cooking, and the wine he likes for drinking, and why those are never the same bottle. It goes into the soft-covered notebook Priya already has half filled, added to, instead of started fresh, so it reads like continuation, and not conclusion. No reading back happens over what's been written. The notebook closes, gets set on the shelf where she'll find it without having to ask, and the lamp goes dark. In that dark, lying flat with hands folded over the stomach, like already practicing for something, the sentence finally gets let through in full, for the first time. just in case there's no one here to tell her myself. No tears come. Whatever tears existed got spent somewhere on a bathroom floor months ago. The sentence just sits there in the room, small and true, until sleep takes it away for a few hours and hands it back new in the morning. Morning after writing down every recipe owned, breakfast still gets cooked like nothing was ever confessed to a notebook in the dark. That's the trick of a body still willing to perform. It doesn't ask permission from whatever got decided the night before. It just gets up. It just goes to work. Mornings have stopped being trusted, though. The first few minutes of every day now go to inventory before anything moves. Fingers first, then the ache in the back, then whatever new thing has arrived overnight to introduce itself. Today, it's a heaviness behind the ribs never felt before. Dull and low, the kind of thing that would have been called nothing 2 months ago and can't quite be dismissed now. The pantry at 6 holds the good flour, the one Priya hasn't learned to reach for yet. The floor does the thing it did before, faster this time. No warning tilt, no grace period, just the body deciding, mid-step, that it's finished being asked to stand. Down between 2 shelves, one hand catching a jar of preserved lemons on the way, glass and lemon rind scattering across the floor, in a mess that would have caused mortification a year ago. Getting up doesn't happen. Trying leads nowhere. The legs simply decline, the way a phone declines a call from a number it doesn't recognize. No calling out happens. That's never happened. Even now, on the floor, with lemon juice soaking into a sleeve and the heart going too fast, some old and stubborn part still runs the math on how embarrassing it will be if someone finds this like this. Dinner is late. Not once in 3 years has that happened. Not through storms. Not through the week of flu with a fever cracking behind the eyes. Desmond notices before anyone else, because he's the only one in this house who has ever paid attention to a clock belonging to someone other than himself. His footsteps come first, down the hall, unhurried at first, the pace of a man expecting an ordinary delay, then faster, then not a walk at all. Chelsea! The name comes through the pantry door like something breaking. He finds the floor between the shelves, lemon rind scattered like something ceremonial, and for 1 full second, he simply stands in the doorway not moving, the way you stand very still in front of something not yet possible to understand. Then he's down on the floor, and his face does the thing it spent months not having to do. His hand goes to the wrist first, checking, maybe, for a pulse already known to be there, because vampires listen for heartbeats the way footsteps get listened for. But this isn't listening. This is looking, really looking, for the first time in longer than can be counted. The sleeve has ridden up. He sees the wrist the way it actually is now. Narrow, tendons standing up under skin gone thin as paper, and something crosses his face never seen there before. Not in 3 years of critique and correction, and the low, constant hum of his approval. How long? His voice has none of its usual weight. It comes out small. How long has this been happening? I'm just tired. The sentence, so worn from use, comes out on its own, without permission, the way a hand reaches for a doorknob turned 10,000 times. Don't. His hand tightens slightly around the wrist. Not painful, just certain. Don't say that to me again. I've heard you say it for months, and let myself believe it, because believing it was easier than asking what it actually meant. No ready answer exists for that either. Being caught without a script is new too. He doesn't call for anyone. Priya's voice carries from the kitchen once, asking if everything's all right, and he answers handled, in a tone that ends the question before it fully forms. He gathers this body up off the pantry floor himself, no servant summoned, no one else allowed near this, and lightness registers for the first time, because he lifts like something feared to be breaking further, not something feared to be dropped. The walk to the bedroom takes longer than it should. He's slow on purpose, giving time to fill the silence with an explanation making this smaller than it is. Nothing gets offered. There's no smaller version of the truth left to give. He sets the body down on the bed like it's made of something he doesn't have a name for. He kneels beside it after, level now, his eyes doing something never directed at anyone here in 3 years. Not appraisal, not correction, just looking, plain and unguarded, the way you look at something almost missed entirely. What do you need? 3 words. 3 years of feeding this man, anticipating every want before it could be voiced. An entire language built out of knowing what he needed without him ever having to ask. Nobody has ever once turned that question back around. Not him, not anyone. No answer arrives for that. The mouth opens and nothing comes. The way taste stopped arriving months ago. Some private mechanism gone quiet at the exact moment it's needed most. I don't know. That comes out finally. The truest thing said to him since the first day in his kitchen. Nobody's ever asked me that. Something moves through his face. Not shock, closer to grief, aimed backward, at every year he didn't ask. Then we'll find out together, he says, starting now. He doesn't leave. He sits on the floor beside the bed, with his back against the frame, one hand still loosely inside his, and neither voice breaks the quiet for a long while. The windows cracked an inch, and the cold Nashville night comes in low and steady, carrying the smell of wood smoke from somewhere down the street, ordinary and unbothered by what's happening in this room. Lying there in the quiet, the specific, unfamiliar weight of being looked at instead of used, finally settles in. It isn't relief exactly. It's closer to the ache after holding your breath too long and finally letting it go, that first raw inhale that hurts on its way in before it starts to help. For the first time in 3 years, in this house, someone else holds still, instead of holding still alone. 4 days pass in that bed, Desmond staying through every one, and somewhere in that stretch the house learns to run without either of them paying attention to it, its own kind of miracle too tired to marvel at properly. Priya brings broth that goes mostly unfinished. Dr. Whitfield comes twice, her face telling everything her mouth is too kind to say outright. Desmond doesn't leave the room for either visit. He sits in the chair pulled beside the bed, close enough that reaching for his hand stopped being necessary somewhere around the 2nd day, because he'd already stopped letting go of it. The pain has changed shape. It isn't sharp anymore. It's more like weather now, a low-pressure system sitting over everything, and breathing has been learned inside it, the way you learn to breathe inside a house that's always a little too cold. You should sleep. The voice has thinned to something worn at the edges. On the 3rd night. You don't need to sit up for this. I've slept for 400 years, he says. I can go without for a few more nights. That's not what I meant. I know what you meant. His eyes don't leave. I'm not leaving. Ask me something else. Nothing else gets asked. The silence holds instead, and he lets it hold too, and that not asking becomes its own kind of conversation, the words for it never available while standing at a stove. On the 4th night, waking happens near 3, The room dark except for the low lamp he keeps on now. Always, since the pantry. The hands have gone cold in a way that has nothing to do with the window he leaves cracked. The body knows, in the plain animal way it knows weather before the sky has changed, that the end of something is close. Desmond. He's awake instantly, the way he always is now, like sleep has become something done with one eye still open, watching. I'm here. I need you to say something to me, and I need you to mean it, because there won't be time left to find out later if you didn't. Anything. Tell me I mattered. Not the meals, not the schedule, not the accounts, not any of it. The voice catches, and it's allowed to, no reason left to hide it from anyone. Tell me you'd have wanted me here, even if I'd never cooked you a single thing. He's quiet long enough for one cold second of fear that even now, at the very end, this is the one thing he doesn't have in him to give. Then his hand takes hold, both of his around it, and his voice comes out rougher than ever heard, stripped of every trace of the command worn like skin. I would have wanted you here, he says, if you'd never once set foot in that kitchen. I would have wanted you here if you'd burned every meal you ever made me. I didn't fall in love with what you gave me, Chelsea. I fell in love with the woman who gave it, and I was too much of a coward, for 3 years, to tell you the difference mattered to me at all. Something in the chest, some old and exhausted muscle, finally lets go of a weight carried since before ever walking into this house. Say my name again, Chelsea. He says it like it costs him something, like it's the only word left in 400 years of language that still means anything. Chelsea, I love you. Not my cook, not my house. You. That sentence gets held, the way a spoon of soup once got held, testing it, waiting for the information to arrive. This time it does. Clean and whole and entirely real. No decision gets made to close the eyes. Only his hand tightening around one still holding on, and the low sound of the wind finding the gap in the window, and then nothing at all. No pain, no weather, just quiet, complete and unafraid. He tells it later, though there is no later for the one telling this part, only for the version of the story continuing without her in it, that she went sometime near dawn, the sky over Nashville just beginning to lighten at the edges, the colour of something not quite decided yet between night and morning. They bury her on a Thursday, in the rain, because Nashville in autumn rarely gives a choice about that. Desmond stands at the grave alone. He's forbidden anyone else from his world to come, the way another man once did in another story, understanding too late what it costs to lose the one person who made forever feel like something worth having. He doesn't leave when the rain gets heavier. He kneels instead, in mud that would ruin any coat, hands pressed flat against the wet earth, like there's still a bargain to be made with it. 400 years of power and command finally worth nothing against the one thing that can't be undone. I could have fixed this. No one hears it but the rain, the ground. I fix everything. I always fix everything. His voice breaks on the last word, and there's no one there to hear it break, except the dead and the rain, and whatever's left of a woman who spent 3 years believing she had to earn the right to be loved before she could receive it. He stays until the rain stops. Then he stays a while after that too, because staying is the only thing left to offer, the only service left to give, in a house where the roles, finally, have reversed. There are other women in this city carrying full trays and empty plates of their own. Cooking for houses that only notice the meal and not the woman who made it. We don't always find each other in time. Some of us learn too late that being needed and being loved were never the same word, no matter how many years spent trying to make them rhyme. But some of us are still looking, still hoping someone finally asks what we need before it's too late for the answer to matter.